All right, everybody ready? Let's get started. Yeah, let's get started. We'll call the meeting to order. We have a roll call for the workshop, please.
Mr. Bachman?
Here.
Henning?
Here.
Gorman?
Here.
Merkel?
Here.
Kelly? Lieberman?
Here.
And Stevens.
Here. Okay, so our workshop discussion tonight is going to be on Meadowbrook and the operations and what, if anything, we're going to try to do going forward. So, Elaine?
So on September 2nd, I presented information regarding Meadowbrook Golf and Banquet operations. With the council packets that you have in front of you, you do have a printout of that presentation as well as the updated, most recent financials, which is of September of 2021. One of the items that was highlighted in this presentation and in the packet is that our catering contract with the Grill at Heritage that's doing business as Meadowbrook Catering is going to be, our contract with them is going to expire March of 2022.
Elaine, excuse me.
No.
And that was another of my catalysts to come and see the next step in this, because I learned so much from that presentation. So I do have to have.
Well, no, it was the same presentation. It was a very similar presentation that I gave to you all on the 2nd, was given to the Government Academy. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, what date was that?
September 2nd. Oh, the contract
Yeah,
expiration?
the expiration.
Sure. March 30th of 2022. So with that contract expiring, options were given on how we can move forward with operations. Staff's recommendation is highlighted on page 15 through 17 of the presentation. So tonight I'm here because it is imperative that council provides direction on how we move forward, because no matter what we decide to do, it is going to take time, especially if that means changing from our contract with Meadowbrook Catering. So we do need to kind of get the ball rolling on what we want to do next. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have regarding that presentation or the information in front of you. Probably.
So I wasn't here on the 2nd, but I reviewed all the information and I actually watched it all today for about an hour. And
Sorry, that's a lot of me talking, sorry
yeah,
about that.
it was. And he did very well, but but I do have a question on the current owner of the liquor license.
Yes.
I couldn't understand what was said about, I think the question was asked, is he going to relinquish the liquor license to us? Is he going to transfer it voluntarily? What, do you know, if we decide to go that route, what's he going to do?
Sure, we don't know for sure. It was transferred to him from the previous owner of the liquor license, which was the previous catering company that was contracted out. So the hope is that that he is willing to transfer it to us and it stays with the facility rather than going with him. Because my understanding is that it is that there's only so many within a county, and he wouldn't necessarily have another place here that he could necessarily transfer it to.
Has he been briefed on this at all?
He does know that he does know that we are looking at options and that council is making a decision or looking at the different options that are available.
And what did he say? Like, I'm interested in staying here, or?
He is, and he would be looking for a 5-year contract.
I think we pretty well briefed him at our last meeting.
I'd agree.
But, Elaine, what I would suggest is that, we attempt to make a contract with Adrian with everything, I suggest that we try to make a contract with Adrian for 1 year with the 2-year renewable. But he does all of the things that we have, that the committee has put down. The shuck and shack, or the shack, whatever we called it here, I don't have it right in front of me. And we take over the liquor license, the city. And we tell Adrian that there will be a golf cart with alcoholic beverages on it. The grill will be open from 11 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night when the lights are off. And whatever else we had in our agenda, your recommendations, or the committee, I don't know who the committee is. And if he doesn't take that, then we move on from there. But we have 6 months, and we can give Adrian some time, and Dennis or Martina will have to write up the contract. And I also suggest that any new equipment that is purchased, the city purchases. Because if I recall, the last time you said if Adrian leaves, he takes all the new equipment with him.
Right.
We have to purchase it, one or the other. And I think it would be in our benefit that as we move forward to purchase the equipment ourselves, and then we would have a full facility whenever.
And that would be a big undertaking to take on all that kitchen equipment, because.
I'm talking about the new kitchen equipment.
Correct.
What was bought up till this point in time is Adrian's.
Correct.
But-
And I mean, I don't know what necessarily would be needing replaced, but with my talks with Adrian, my understanding is that he doesn't find it financially viable to keep the grill open. That is why he has not done so. That is why he has not opened up the shack, the snack
Right.
shack. And with COVID, that it's even more so that he's not necessarily willing to do that. But of course, I can go back to him. Check to
COVID is an
see what-
excuse for 2020.
It is. I mean, but just saying that, again, restaurants have had issues, but he also, I understand his point that it's hard for him to make any investments with a 1-year contract.
Right.
Because for him to put a lot of money into something for 1 year, not knowing if it's renewable, I don't know if it's necessarily viable. I don't want to speak for him.
I don't know if he'll accept it or not, but you can also add some incentives because you're talking about hiring an event planner at $50,000. So that gives you a little money to work with, Elaine. I mean, my business experience tells me that anyway. And
And we would still.
you could give Adrian those incentives because I've had innumerable people come up to me and say, why in God's name is that grill not open? We get done playing golf and we have to go to the Buckhorn, or we have to go to Ray's, or we have to go somewhere. And we just soon go in there, the 4 of us, and have a beer and a sandwich and then do whatever.
And we can certainly, see if he would accept a contract that way. But I know that he's asked for financial, basically, if it doesn't make money, then we subsidize that for the staffing costs for him to remain open.
Right. Well, I think we've done that in the past because
not.
we've lost revenue because it's been closed.
It
You
could be
can look
because
at
of
it however you
golfers,
want to.
but
There's two
sure,
ways,
but
you know.
we don't get any money, the city does not make any money from the grill,
Okay?
period.
As long as the people come to play golf because they can do the grill afterwards.
Sure, it very much, I believe that it creates an atmosphere, for people to, have a drink or have a bite to eat afterwards.
And if the liquor license is in the city's name, that's another expense that Adrian doesn't have to assume.
Correct, but then we would, we may have, because with the banquet operations, he does make quite a bit of money on the alcohol sales for the
Right.
banquet operations. So that would have to be another item looked at is, because he talked about also having a threshold for only holding events that are gonna spend this much money so he can recover costs. Well, if we're taking alcohol away from that,
I didn't say that.
well,
I
he
said the
wouldn't-
liquor license is our name, is in the city's name.
And if that's
But
the case, then
Adrian
it's,
still runs the bar.
and we can't do that with a liquor license. Whoever,
Adrian can tell us what to buy and the city has to buy it.
but then us
I've had
selling
two
it,
licenses, Elaine.
okay, my understanding, and Martina, correct me if, I don't know if anybody else is, but we actually, the employee of the city then who holds the liquor license actually has to be the one to sell it. That we can't necessarily have another entity selling the alcohol.
I don't know that that is correct. I mean, maybe with governments it is, but I mean,
Because we've run into it with,
if Adrian hires an employee and he pays her and
correct, but that
everything else,
employee
why do,
is under
she can
the
be our employee,
liability of
doesn't
it.
cost us any money.
Right, but the employee's then under the liability of whoever owns that liquor license. So therefore, the liability lies with the person who has the liquor license.
Well, if they're in
So
our
then we-
facility, the liability, we have liability also, I believe, Elaine. I'm not an insurance man, but,
Sure, I
Dennis,
mean, if there is
don't we
an
have
overs-
liability if somebody gets loaded and falls down, or? I understand what the bartender's liability is too. but-
Now can you hear me? So, my understanding, and you're the attorney here, I'm just a litigator, but my understanding is that, we're talking about apples and oranges. When you're talking about premises liability, that would be if somebody slips and falls, yeah, we have some liability there because we, own the place. But if you're talking about liquor license, that's a different animal. And they would have to be an employee of the holder of the liquor license, is my understanding, and in order to sell liquor. So that's why he hires bartenders. Those bartenders can act under his liquor license. But if it's our liquor license, then they can't do that.
Well, we could hire him as long as he pays them.
Well, now you're getting more into my area, which is criminal.
We're very close with the police in this area.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So how much has Adrian at this point invested in equipment, in restaurant equipment?
I'm not quite sure. That is something I can get the information on. I can give you a ballpark of what he's bought, but dollar amount.
Okay.
not-
Because Kevin, didn't you say something about how much equipment that he had purchased? At one time, okay.
If he needs something, he bought it. We weren't gonna repair anything in the kitchen, but
Right,
it's used for this purpose, so.
right.
Well, I hate to say this, but I mean, I've been in that kitchen and really, nothing really looks new.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
A fryer and a grill.
Well, even the grill with the pancakes, that was an issue when we were doing that at Breakfast with Santa. It was not operational.
And I think he's
at
bought
that
one
time.
since 2019.
Okay, so my
But-
second question is, what if he does not relinquish the liquor license? Because I know from experience, I've had issues with a liquor license in the past. And if the owner doesn't give up the liquor license, then I guess it's a legal question.
And which we've looked at in the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Martina.
Yeah, in that case, you'd have to apply for new liquor license, and you'd have to see what's available. And if I remember correctly, when I looked about a month ago, everything was available except the Sunday sales.
That is my recollection too,
So-
Martina. And that's why we're
Would he
trying to,
wanna- I'm sorry.
oh, no, go ahead.
Would he want to sell it to us? Is that might be his incentive in it?
Could be.
I've got.
I don't believe you can have two at the same address, can you, Martina?
I don't think you can. I don't profess to be a liquor attorney, but I think that is correct. And I think, also again, I think you can't sell the liquor license, you have to sell it as part of a business, if I'm remembering correctly. Which I think, I did speak to a liquor license attorney who's in our building and, just gave him the nuts and bolts. He said, yeah, I think we can probably, if he's willing to sell it, I think we can probably put together a deal to do a buy-sell, which includes more than just the liquor license, because you can't, I don't believe you can legally just sell the license.
Martina, I don't want to disagree with you, but at Tailgaters, we sold the building to McDonald's. We sold the liquor license elsewhere.
And that's something I would want to look at, because again, you need somebody who does that every day, who knows the ins and outs of that. So we can certainly double check on that, if that's the way you want to go, and make sure we have good counsel on how to do that and how to do it appropriately.
And there's a very good guy in Columbus that specializes in that. I forgot to ask the guy his name, but
I've heard of that one. I know his name. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
there used to be one in Dayton, but he passed, so.
Well, I think we need to do that either way, so we know that answer about, because if we don't have a liquor license, that really is gonna kind of change everything.
What does Centerville do? They have the liquor license, or who runs, or Beaver Creek, whoever?
Vandalia, they all have.
Yeah, so whenever staff started looking at this, Elaine did do her due diligence and went through and called all of the local municipally owned golf courses to see what other places do. And Elaine, I don't know if you have that information with you, but it may be of benefit to kind of just run down what the other organizations do.
Sure. Let me see here. So Heatherwood, Yankee, and Miami Shores, that also combine, Miami Shores and Troy, which also combines with Hobart Arena. They have banquet centers and their own in-house catering. So they actually do staff absolutely everything with in-house.
The city owns it all then?
Correct.
Okay.
And then Castle Hills and Vandalia, their banquet room is relatively small. They don't have the events like the other facilities do. But they, and then with the retirement of their full-time restaurant staff member, they moved more towards a snack bar operations with part-time staff, but they also have the liquor license. And Beaver Creek operates their own concession stand and uses outside caterers for their banquet operation, which is similar to what staff recommendation is.
I got a question. Well, first off, I think looking at this, the best way to look is really how we're going to grow the facility and everything with it. So I like your guys' recommendations. And I think when we're talking about like with the catering, it comes down to kind of demand. The places you mentioned, they're so high in demand and very established, they can do that. We're not at that point yet. I think we can get there. So that's kind of giving my 2 cents on just the recommendations you have. My question is, the full-time event planner, what will be kind of the bullet points of their job duties?
Sure. So they would be, because one of the frustrations we've heard from people or, is that there aren't established hours at Meadowbrook, which as with the contractor, we really don't have anything in the contract saying you have to be here between this hour and this hour. With the event planner, they could establish office hours, so basically anybody could come in during certain hours to view the facility. The event planner would be the one to take the calls, to do the marketing, get things going for events, outside events, private events. They'd also be one to possibly put on city-run events. Say, I know in the past, the Mother's Day brunch, it was well received, that's something that person could coordinate to possibly bring in additional revenue, use an outside caterer to bring it, to do the food, but, do all the coordination with that. They'd also be the liaison. I know, Bill has a lot on his plate, so with golf outings, to make sure that golf outings do run smoothly, and that all the i's are dotted, t's are crossed.
So what
with
happens?
that.
It's someone has dedicated office hours, but then that person is running a golf outing, and then someone comes and they're not there.
So it would be, I mean, more than likely, I guess office hours could be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We usually have golf outings on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So we could work within the schedule to do that. And they would still be there, at the facility. And somebody would, concessions would still be there that they could easily get a hold of the person who's already in the building to be able to contact
I
them.
just am really reluctant at hiring hiring one person at $50,000 a year, $24 an hour, to have so many responsibilities.
And 50,000's with benefits and things like that too,
Well, then that puts it even lower. I mean, Chick-fil-A's hiring for $19 an hour. And I know I've talked to Tina about this, and Ms. Kelly and I stated, maybe we would need 2 people with lesser hours, but that way it provides more of an opening. I mean, we're gonna have someone that's gonna work all the holidays, work every wedding, work every weekend. I wouldn't wanna work every weekend. I would say, no, thank you. I don't think we're gonna find anybody that's gonna wanna work every weekend.
Well, is this,
But I mean, I
position-
think people who are in the, people who are in the
managers do
event
work every
planning
weekend.
business understand the demand of that
Well,
position.
Yes, but fortunately not, probably in this work environment.
Now, a lot of times, your event planners, things like that, I've done that at multiple facilities in the Dayton area. I've been someone who's worked, been the one to set up an event for an organization, so I've worked with them. I mean, a lot of times, those people, they do all the, the work beforehand. They're not necessarily at those. That's typically gonna be like your caterer and thing. I did planned a banquet a few years ago down at the Marriott. The person who I was dealing with a lot, they weren't there at the event.
Right.
It was everyone else, so I think we're kind of looking at this, this facility is gonna be open to things quite often. I don't think we're gonna have someone there who necessarily is gonna have to be there, every Saturday night for all these things.
Yeah,
We need to specify then what the event planner's responsibilities are and how many hours that event planner's gonna have to put in even beforehand. But at the same time, when it comes down to the event, who does that fall back on? Does it fall back on the event planner when things aren't running smoothly? Does it fall back on the caterer? So in my experience in the past, the event planner has always been there from the start to the finish. Look at weddings, for example, banquets.
we had our wedding reception at Marriott, and the lady was there up until like maybe 10 or 11 p.m.
Yeah, but they're not always there. I've had caterers too, where they'll send a staff member who's the contact person. I mean, I think we're getting into details now we need to probably work on later.
I'm just saying, I would be more in favor of like 2 part-time, or part-time to full, maybe 32 hours a week.
But then you're running into Affordable Care Act where we're still gonna have to pay them insurance and we're still gonna have to, I mean, then we're
I'd like- yeah,
still,
and we
I
understand
feel
that.
like those costs where, I understand with the full-time and then not saying that we don't have a seasonal person there, that works that 30 hours a week to help subsidize. And, that's a great internship too. That's a great opportunity for, yes, part-time people. And that's another part of this, that part-time we are gonna have to rely on part-time too, but we need someone over there to be the face, in my opinion, because unfortunately, I can't be. And as much as I would love to be, there's no way. And in my opinion, in order for this to work, we need that full-time person there to keep things organized, keep the office, because that's to return those phone calls or make sure those phone calls are getting returned on time within 24 hours or, 48 if it's a weekend.
See, I think,
Fine.
oh, I'm, s-
I-
go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if we could step back for a minute, because I think we're starting to get into almost a decision that we've already made, that,
Right.
yeah, we're gonna take it over. Before we do that, can we kind of go through the benefits and and I know I read,
No,
I
but I
read
think
everything
it's
you
great.
have, but, so right now, we have someone who operates it. And back in 2015, I think it was, when we went with Elite, and Elite wasn't doing the job. So then we went with Adrian, and,
Elite,
yeah.
did pull out the
Elite
contract
quit,
before it was
that's
over.
right. That's right, that's right. Yeah, and so we then put out a request for people to bid on it, and we had some interest until they found out that they were gonna have to take out the liquor license, and so a
There's a
bunch of
few
them
different-
dropped.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that left us with Adrian. And we didn't have much choice, it was Adrian, or it was Adrian, or it was Adrian.
correct.
And, and that's, and I mean, I don't mean that in an offensive way at all,
But no, he was the only one who actually put a proposal in.
And he made some efforts. There were some good Mother's Day events there. He used to have brunch there, I think, once a month. But from the beginning, we were trying to get him to do more. And I don't see that he's done more. It appears to me he's done less. And like what Brendan said, I think we have to look to the future, because in my mind, they go hand in hand. You have the golf course, which is supplemented by the snack bar and the cart. And, I mean, even Moss Creek had carts going around with beverages on them. And so it supplements that experience for the people that are golfing. And then you also have events. And I was talking to people that were looking at the place for a wedding, sort of like Kenny, and that didn't go there because they were stuck with one caterer. And honestly, the facilities aren't, plush. And so it didn't justify being stuck with that one caterer. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if number one, do we want to get rid of Adrian? And if the answer to that is, yeah, we've given him his chance and he hasn't taken us to where we want to go, then do we want to have someone else do it, or do we want to take it over based upon your recommendation?
I agree with a lot of what you just said. I'll also add, Miss Kelly and I were at a wedding there maybe 3 Augusts ago. No air conditioning in August. That was a really hot wedding reception. But I do like what Tim was saying, because I think it's our due diligence to also let Adrian maybe present to us. I mean, I feel like in this case, we should listen to both sides. And I agree with what you said with, he hasn't really come and stepped up like we expected. We were on a marketing committee. We talked, I forget how many years ago that was, with expectations. And we had a lot of asks that have really fallen off the cliff. But maybe for us to make a really well-sounded decision, we should give him the chance to talk with us. Just to kind of go with what Mr. Gorman was saying.
But he
I mean,
didn't
I
take
think
our
the biggest thing
recommendations.
about taking over ourselves is I asked you the last time, I forget when that was, are you a bartender, Elaine?
Right.
If I call in at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and say I'm taking evening off, are you gonna cover for me?
Right, and, correct.
And if the cook does that at 5 o'clock, are you gonna be able to cover for him or her?
Well,
Well,
they
and
don't do that now.
And that's
either.
right, and
Well-
Well,
unfortunately.
Adrian does do it.
well, and
I've seen
indeed-
Adrian behind the bar with a ball hat on, and looks like he just came from work somewhere. Not at Meadowbrook, but somewhere other than Meadowbrook.
Not
So
that he
in the
could serve.
And the staff recommendation, I mean, it's basically saying we're not operating the grill as a restaurant. The grill is going to operate as a snack shack. So we're not going to need to worry about someone being there at 5 o'clock at night to run the restaurant.
If you have
Just-
an
just the
event,
bar.
Amanda, you are worried about someone being there to do the cooking.
Yes,
For
so-
those people that are coming
Yes,
to
but under
to
this
Kenny's wedding
recommendation- right,
or
under this-
Dennis's wedding.
Under this recommendation, whoever is hosting the event is able to bring in their own caterer. They're no longer obligated to use the caterer that's at Meadowbrook because there isn't one. They're able to bring someone in from the outside.
Which, if you remember, initially, some of the concerns we had is that we were looking to have multiple caterers that would be available for weddings at our site. And Adrian, I don't think, wanted to do that. He wanted the exclusive on it. And I'm not, you know, I don't get there enough to tell you, you know, what's bad or good about it. But my concern is looking at the numbers. And right now, I just remember Adrian coming in and he said, yeah, well, I'll do all this stuff that we were asking him to do, and I haven't seen it get done. You know, probably the best thing would be if Brendan and Kenny took it over and did the cooking,
And,
I'll bartend. but-
Elaine? Do you have the numbers on what Beaver Creek and Centerville spend in their golf courses?
I do
think
not.
the newspaper said that Centerville, they're both losing money, and I think the number, I didn't
I
get
thought
back to it
Yankee
yet,
was
is
in the
$53,000.
Oh, okay.
Yankee paid off their bonds 5 years early on that
Yeah.
place, so they're doing fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can, did I interrupt anyone? I kind of want to
No, please
throw
go
in
right
a
ahead.
few things. First off, and I've got to know Adrian in time here, Adrian's a good cook. But the other stuff, it's not there. And I'm going to argue that forever here. And yes, it was a few years, I was on council at that time. I remember the last time when the contract renewal came up, he kind of, I remember he sat here, kind of got a little browbeated. But at the time, it was the right thing to say, okay, we need these improvements. And it hasn't happened. Again, great cook, but the other things, and again, goes back to, you know, these aspects need to improve on just the banquet and everything. Here's the other reality of the tie of the food service with golf and everything. Golf has been changing, and that place is a former country club. That lifestyle isn't nearly what it used to be there, of spending your day at the country club there and using all those amenities. It's very often, yes, it's good to have the bar set up for like a snack shack, and that's what a lot of places are doing now, is they don't have a full-service restaurant. It basically comes down to here, you can get some drinks. If you want some food, there's some snack options, but it kind of financially works out best for that. So I'm again going to go to looking at the staff recommendations. I do agree with those. And lastly, my cooking skills, I learned from the best.
Can I-
One other question, because I'm still toying around with what Tim has said, what Kenny has said. And so really what we're doing here, the essence of it is, what we're considering doing, is taking the exclusive away from him and taking the liquor license from him. But nothing says he can't still cater there.
That is correct. Actually, in the current contract, all the events that have been booked for 2020 and beyond will still be with Adrian. They will still utilize his services for catering.
So if somebody walks in and says, hey, I want to do a wedding, do you guys, you know, you have the facility, do you have any recommendations for caterers? We could give them, for example, a list of Clayton caterers, and also have him, because he's not Clayton, he's Miami County, isn't he?
Technically, it's under the Heritage it's a subsidiary, I think, basically the Grill at Heritage, but which is in Piqua, I do believe.
Yeah.
But I know that they just opened something up at the Green, so I'm not quite
You know,
sure.
and we could partner, you know, or, I mean, basically kind of talk with caterers and say, hey, you know, we have this facility, maybe do like a recommended caterers list, which, you know, gives them just a little, you know, a little more marketing or things like that.
But I guess I'm still trying to go back to the first question. Do we want to keep the contract with Adrian? And everything I have heard so far is, no, not the one that he wants, maybe a different one, or none at all. And I think that's a decision, the first decision we have to make, because if we go Tim's suggestion, then we're gonna have to go to Adrian, lay it out for him, he's gonna have to come back to us and say yay or nay, and to say we have till March really is not, I don't think that's realistic, because if he says nay, we have to get the liquor license, we then have to develop a plan, either by going to a different caterer or by filing the staff recommendations. So if we're gonna do it, do we have a drop dead date as to when we have to make this decision?
Not a drop dead date, but again, I mean, if we are kind of at borrowed time, in my opinion, right now.
We should decide it. I think we should decide and vote, do we want to do a 5-year contract that he wants? And then if the majority says no, then we have a discussion as to what type of contract, whether it's Mr. Gorman's or if we want to do something like that, then we vote on that. And if we have a majority, then we'll go forward with that. But I feel like that's the first step we need. I agree with you, but that's the first step we need to do. We need to start voting on what type of contracts.
Well, we can't vote in workshop, but we can probably get a good recognition of where we stand at
So
workshop.
Martina, can we say if we're in favor of, how can we go down the line and do that?
Dennis is right. You shouldn't vote, but what you can do is go around the table and give your opinion as to what what direction you think it should go.
I think the biggest question here is not so much Adrian, but does the city want the responsibility of running that, I'll call it a restaurant? All right, I know it's going to be on the golf course, and I know there's going to be a young lady riding around in a golf cart.
Snack shack. I would use that
Okay,
term more
but-
than a
But you're also
restaurant.
having weddings, and you mentioned Mother's Day, Elaine.
Or I was just
And
giving an
all those
example.
events. Now, who's going to run those if we don't have someone there? Now, we can, when our daughter got married at the Art Center downtown, there was 5 choices we could make, okay? And we made one, obviously, because she did get married. But I don't think that the city of Clayton, at this point in time, is ready to assume the liability and the responsibility of running Meadowbrook Country Club. I mean, we mentioned 3 or 4 cities, Troy, Centerville, Beaver Creek, which are all much larger than the city of Clayton is.
Which we would not be like Troy, like Centerville. I mean, that is not, and I agree that we do not need to get into the restaurant business. We do not need to be doing that. That is not our area of expertise. That's where we would still use caterers to run, and they, work the events. But the person who's renting the facility would have options to choose whatever caterer they want.
So they're opening, for example, in the past, we only gave a 30-day window for an RFP for caterers when we were looking before. So now, if we open it up for caterers, we, of course, need to start as soon as possible. So we could open it up for RFPs to see who would be interested in coming in for that.
And my understanding, I mean, from the research that I did, I wasn't here, so I may be mistaken, that although the RFP was there for 30 days, because that was the required, it was actually months prior that that staff went out and spoke with multiple caterers, multiple restaurants, trying to get people in, had them take a look at it, had them, I mean, it was months in advance, but then nobody, when it came to, okay, here's the RFP, actually fulfilled the requirements. The first time only 2 did, the second time 1 did.
That was a disaster.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, we had people that wanted to make it a sports bar, and less than that, even less than a sports bar. But I don't think, maybe times are different, but right now, the restaurant business is not blooming, and people aren't looking for more places to go. They're looking for people to come to the place they have
Correct, and that's
go
why
to
we're
work.
not wanting
Yeah,
to
you
have
know,
a
and that's the
restaurant.
problem we have right now.
But this is more choices for banquet facility, for weddings and events. So if you have more choices, people are going to tend to book with 3 or 4 different caterers, because trust me, if, for example, if I was booking a wedding and I saw that Adrian was the only preferred choice, maybe I wouldn't choose that, because there wasn't other options for me. Because I know in the past, I've heard from other residents and potential guests that they weren't gonna book because there was 1 caterer. They didn't have it opened up
Correct.
for other caterers. And this is a different ballgame, what we're discussing versus what's happened in the past.
Absolutely.
Basically on the staff recommendations, you're saying here, and this is the way was interpreting it all along, I mean, I don't think we have to send out, I don't think we have to provide a list. I think as long as people are, like you put on here, as long as they're licensed caterers, their full facility, we don't care. I mean, basically what we're renting is the facility itself, and we're out of the food business from the catering side.
That is correct.
So if I can, because I think we only have about 15 minutes, so Mayor, if I may, synthesize this a little bit. And I don't mean to interrupt. I mean, after all, I would always defer to an OU grad when it comes to partying. So I know you know more about that than anybody.
That is true.
But I think we have 4 choices. And choice number 1 would be to keep the contract with him on a 5-year basis. Choice number 2 would be to offer him a modified contract along the lines of what Tim was talking about. Choice number 3 then would be if we reject 1 and 2, you go to 3, which would be to put out a request for someone to take his place. And then choice number 4 would be to follow the recommendation of the staff.
Exactly what I have written down right here. I have that same
The
thing.
great minds
So
think
I was
alike.
gonna hope that we could maybe start having that conversation, what
Right,
each. member
that
is in
was my
favor.
suggestion, is that.
And that is
let's-
outlined on page 16 of the presentation.
Wow.
But no, that's correct. No,
I'm
I like it. I like it.
All right, so why don't we
Why don't you
just
start
start?
us? You
Okay.
start us.
I'm opposed to choice number 1. Which was a 5-year contract,
Yes.
as he has proposed.
Yeah, I don't oppose that. That's not gonna work, no.
I would also oppose a 5-year contract. Quite frankly, the reason being is, and I've listened to what everybody has said at this point. Adrian's been there since 2016,
Correct.
and in basically 5 years, what has improved? I have not seen anything that would substantially say there's been an improvement in operation. And I told previous city manager, when all this was being done, is that I would support what was being done, provided there was changes. And I'm not seeing changes. It's been more or less someone willing to come sit in an office all day and basically do as minimal amount of work effort as possible. And there's no been incentive on his part as far as keeping the operation running to improve it. And therefore, I cannot push this forward with 5 years.
Well, I also would oppose 5 years, and I would, I'll just go ahead and say I would recommend the staff recommendation also, with the stipulation, I guess, is that, we need to figure the liquor license out. if we can't get that, if he says he's not relinquishing it, like we hope he will, then I'd like to know what options we have to get that, because again, golfers play on Sunday, and, no Sunday sales we would take a hit there. But, that's what I would do.
I don't think we need a 5-year contract with Adrian, but I think the first thing the city should do is take the liquor license or get their own. I don't think that Adrian can go anywhere but Meadowbrook with that liquor license. It's to that address, and I think there can only be one at that address. So I think we need to address that immediately, but I don't think that the city of Clayton needs to go into full-time management of a country club.
I would oppose the 5-year, and I would agree with Mr. Gorman, a fan of having $100,000 in new staff expenses at Meadowbrook.
Exact same response as the mayor.
So then that takes us to number 2, and I think you may have gotten a little ahead of us. Number 2 would be a modified contract to Adrian. And Tim, I think what you're saying is that is what you would like to see happen, is give him the offer of, we take the liquor license from him, we own the liquor license, and then we give him stipulations that he has to have a cart, he has to be open on so much time, et cetera, all our demands. And what if he doesn't do it?
Well, then we go,
I was gonna say, with the cart and with the liquor license, it wouldn't I don't wanna get into the weeds with it, but that, that wouldn't be Adrian, that would be on us. If we had the liquor license, and then we would still have to get staff, so. And I feel that with it's not necessarily, that with the expenses we're seeing, we're also seeing revenue come in. So it's not necessarily $100,000 expense, because we would have then the liquor license and staffing, the sale of it, so therefore we would get the revenue of it.
is that staff gonna work for free?
No, but
I know that pretty girls get big tips on golf course in those carts. I know that. I've been there before, Elaine, but I mean, we still have to pay the
I
people
get
that,
it.
unless, like I said, Adrian pays them, and
but which we.
So just
we're-
trying to keep it,
Yeah.
because we only have about 5 more minutes. I'm opposed to number 2, because I think it gets too complicated for us to do number 2, the way we would want to do it, based upon what you're saying, Tim.
I'm opposed to number 2 as well, and I feel like we've already tried all this in the past with Adrian, and we have gotten nothing in return. We've worked and worked with him. We've had a marketing committee. We presented all these things to him. What has been done? Nothing.
The option number 2, I think, offers up too many complications and too many options. We might agree on one item that might be in common approach, but there might be other things that kind of throw itself into there to mix it up more, and I think it becomes way too complicated to try to manage, especially get something going in 6 months.
Well, I'm not necessarily opposed to talking to Adrian. The food part, I think the catering, the food part's good, but I don't like virtually anything else. And so, but after, I've talked to him several times about just different pieces of this, and, he's not gonna go for that anyway, so. But you know where I stand.
I would oppose it, so I agree with Mr. Gorman. I don't want to have the city run it, but I oppose it for Adrian. I would say, let's do the RFP to see other catering entities that may be interested, and then keep the other half that Mr. Gorman said of letting them run it.
The banquet and the snack. Okay.
I'm opposed to number 2.
So that takes us to number 3, which is putting out the RFP. And I don't feel as strongly about that, but I think we have to define exactly what we want in that RFP. And if we're gonna have the liquor license, we need to start working on that right away. So.
Agree.
So, I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to an RFP, but we have to figure out what those stipulations are gonna be on it.
I agree with Dennis.
Just to jump in here, you might want to tell people what an RFP is.
Request for proposals. So that means outside businesses or catering companies, restaurants would then take, and with that RFP, would it be that it would be sole catering? I mean, that they would be the only caterers within the facility?
And if I could add to that, I mean, there's nothing St. Adrian couldn't respond to that RFP.
That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct.
Well, again, I probably not opposed to floating some RFPs out there, but, you know, our history doesn't show, I'm not very, you know, yeah, I'm just not that hopeful of that, but I'd be okay with it, I guess.
Could I also add, since we're really running short on time,
2 minutes.
that if you're gonna put out an RFP, can we also simultaneously start working on Plan B, which would be the fourth, the fourth alternative that we talked about? And that way, we don't run out of time at the last minute, and you have plans that we can put into. Is everybody okay with that?
I would be okay with doing what you just said, the A and then the B. But I would like the staff recommendation, the price to come down.
Yeah, but that's, yeah, those are weeds that we can talk about. I'm just talking about a process right now.
I agree with Dennis, and thanks for organizing our thoughts.
And with the RFP, then I may have Ms. Zimmerlin get with you, because again, with the RFP there, I know from past looking at what we put out, it is intense. It is, we need to get what exactly we want from them, and if we want to hold the liquor license, or if we don't, that kind of thing. So we'll continue that
I think the
conversation.
consensus is we do want to hold the liquor
Okay.
license.
Okay, thank you for, okay.
So then do you want Elaine to have a discussion with Adrian about whether or not he's willing to transfer the liquor license? Because that's really what we need to know
Yeah.
as to whether or not, which way we're gonna go. So, okay.
Okay.
I
we
move
got-
we close the
Hold up,
workshop.
hold up, we got one more.
Just Elaine, just one quick
Yeah.
question. Just one real quick comment. I mean, can we get some input from the persons that actually use the facility now, as far as like the Rotary or whoever, as far as how they would feel about this?
Sure. And the Rotary, is the only one who uses it for ongoing food purposes. So I can certainly
I'm just,
see
you know,
what they,
just someone who uses the facility, like them or other banquet use.
Schools would use it more if they could bring in Northmont catering. That's
Well,
the biggest pullback.
And I think some of that information is also beneficial to know how other persons feel about potential change in the food operation.
Can I say one thing too as well? And I know Kevin has talked to Shelley Schwartzschuber with Rob's, and I know if Rob's were able to do the same thing, they had mentioned to the fact before, they would bring business to Meadowbrook anyways. So they already have a clientele base. They would bring those people and those contracts to Meadowbrook, which never had the opportunity.
Kevin, can you,
Right.
I know we're running low on time, but this is extremely important to the city. Can you, what did you mean by Northmont would use it more if they can use their own catering?
They've said that, they wanna use Northmont catering, so like NEF.
So we could,
And the schools, you know, they have meetings and stuff, they said they rent the space out or whatever.
Yeah,
but
even
they wanna
fish
use the
fries.
catering, but they can't because they got the.
so could we add that Do the contract or not? Like, an exclusion for Northmont to be able?
RFP, not if you're gonna do an RFP with an exclusive contract. That's the beauty of having the liquor license and flexibility in who they have as their caterers. Cause if you have an RFP as an exclusive, you can't do it.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. So we'll give everybody about